It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join News Director Paul David and News Editor Philip Catafamo as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics in Yavapai County that affect all our lives. And now here's today's Countywide.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Countywide. I'm your host, Philip Catafamo. I'd like to thank you for joining me. On today's show, we are talking Citizens Water Advocacy Group, or CWAG, and my guest today is retired U.S. Geological Survey geologist, Dr. Ed Wolfe. Dr. Wolfe, welcome on to the program.
I'm glad to be here.
Well, we are very happy to have you. Let's start out with this. Can you tell us what the Big Chino Basin is?
Yes, the Big Chino Basin is the very uppermost part of the Verde watershed in that area. It does not have a perennial stream in it. It has water running in it only when it rains. But groundwater moves from the Big Chino Basin down to the south and exits way up near Paulden, and that's the start of the Verde River. So it's an important component of the Verde River watershed.
We are going to be talking a lot about the Verde River during the show, and you are hosting a webinar. CWAG, Dr. Wolfe is working with CWAG to host a Zoom webinar from 10 to noon this coming Saturday. If you are interested in watching that webinar, we will cover a lot of some of the topics that will be discussed in that webinar on today's show, almost like a little preview of the webinar. But again, he'll be talking about the Big Chino Basin as well as the Verde River. The presentation, again, is from 10 to 12 on Saturday. Go to CWAGAZ.org, so CWAGAZ.org to go look for information to get onto that Zoom webinar. Again, that'll be happening this Saturday. So during that webinar, Dr. Wolfe, you'll be talking about the triple threat that comes with the Verde River. Can you tell us more about these threats?
Well, it's a little, yes. So one of the threats is that our groundwater is getting exhausted by pumping, and what is probably climate change. Our temperature is a little higher than it used to be. In the last quarter of a century, the average temperature in Yavapai County is 2 degrees higher than the average temperature in the full preceding century, going back to 1895, and so we're in a warm spell, and we're also in a drought, and we're pumping a lot of water because the main economic activity in the Prescott active management area is development, and so we're really depleting our water supply, and that will, particularly if water is imported from the Big Chino Valley, it will reduce the perennial flow in the Verde River.
And we obviously, there are cities and towns that pull their water from other areas. In your article here that you wrote, you mentioned that the city of Prescott pulls a lot of their water from Chino Valley. Obviously, there are other areas that pull water from different cities and regions. The Verde River, one of the largest flowing rivers in the entire U.S. And you talk about climate change. Obviously, the drought could be contributed to climate change. I don't want to give it a definitive answer. The heat, the temperatures as well. Just more kind of specifically, is the heat drawing water out of the Verde River? Is it causing? Where does climate change play a role specifically here?
Well, I think it reduces the amount of water that's available for recharge. The water for recharge comes from rain and snow melt, and it's been dry. Our recent winters have been very weak in terms of snow. I think people find them disappointing. It isn't what they remembered from years ago. So there's less precipitation, but the the water gets some of the water that begins to soak into the ground gets used by plants to keep them going, and that effect enhances the reduction of water that's available to make its way downward to the aquifer.
Let's go back a little bit to pumping. Obviously, that's been affecting the Verde River. It affects most water sources. More specifically, what kind of results have we seen so far with the pumping that has occurred in the area?
Well, do you want to look at a slide?
Yeah, if you want to bring, let's bring up the one.
Why don't you look at slide 5?
Okay, we'll put up slide number 5 here on the screen for those who are watching on Verde Valley TV.
Okay, so this is a graph. So there's a stream gauge near Paulden on the Verde River. It's measuring flow, the amount of flow in the river, and this particular graph shows the smallest part of that flow. It doesn't show the year's flow. It shows the flow rate of the lowest week of the year, and it does that for each year. And the reason for that is to try, if groundwater is a part of that stream flow, it's probably a small part. And I can't distinguish groundwater in the stream flow from a regular surface runoff in the stream flow. But we know it's a small part. And so this graph shows for every year that the gauge is operated, it shows the amount of flow in the week with the smallest flow of the year. And if you look at the graph, you'll notice that the amount of this low flow, call it, from about 1965 to 1996 was increasing with time. There's a lot of scatter, but that's a best fit line. It was increasing with time. At about 1996, there's something that happened, and the trend changed, and it's been decreasing fairly dramatically since then. That's the orange line going down and to the right, and we have lost a significant amount of that part of the flow, which I think probably serves as a representative or a monitor for how the whole flow is behaving. And if you this is a wild thing, but if you take that trend and project it into the future, you begin to have a dry period in about 50 years at the Paulden gauge. Not dry all year long,
right?
But and I don't mean to suggest that that's what will happen, but the Clarkdale gauge and the Camp Verde gauge show the same relationship, and in all three cases, by the end of the century, if this trend continued, there would be a dry period at each one of those gauges. That presumably would be because of diminished groundwater.
Well, there are many threats to the Verde River currently, and we will continue to discuss those, one of which being the proposed Big Chino Pipeline, which we will talk about on the other side of this break. Okay. Stay with us. We will be right back. Countywide, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Who doesn't dream of home improvements? Perhaps your kitchen, the real living room. Maybe the bathroom, where you bookend your day. Langstrand Contracting is your one-stop shop from tear down to finishing touches. With 35 years of experience, Chris and his team will work with you to match your family's style and budget. Call Langstrand Contracting today for guidance in bringing your vision to life.
Award-winning Soundbites Grill is an entertainment restaurant located in Uptown Sedona at the Hyatt Pinion Point Resort. Open for lunch and dinner, featuring fresh fish, all-natural hand-cut beef, even a full vegan menu. Family-friendly, open 11:30 to 9, late dining on Friday and Saturday. Soundbites Grill has some of the best views of the Sedona Red Rocks. Offers world-class entertainment, food, fun, and music.
Hi, this is Greg at Verde Solar Power. You know, Arizona has lots of clean, renewable sunshine, and we want to help you take advantage of it with our quality solar installations, and we offer to beat any written offer on a residential solar electric system. So bring us your electric bill and let us show you how solar power will save you money. We're located conveniently here in the Verde Valley and are dedicated to helping the valley go solar. So remember, the energy solution comes up every morning.
Starting in the late 1920s, Grandpa Gettle and his brothers laid the groundwork for what would become a family legacy. Almost 100 years and 100 patents later, Gettle's High Desert Mechanical continues to raise the bar of quality heating, cooling, and plumbing products and services in the Verde Valley.
Call Gettle's High Desert Mechanical Heating, Air Conditioning, and Plumbing at 567-2200 or online at GettlesHDM.com, providing solutions for your comfort. Don't settle, get Gettles.
Welcome back to Countywide. I'm your host, Philip Catafamo. On today's show, we are joined by retired U.S. Geological Survey geologist Dr. Ed Wolfe. In the first segment, we talked about some of the threats that are posed to the Verde River, and now we're going to move on to the big Chino Pipeline that is proposed. Dr. Wolfe, just in general, let's talk a little bit about that pipeline. It's been in the works for a few years now, well, many years actually, and is it still on track to happen? Where are we at right now today with that pipeline?
Well, there's nothing that has been done about building the pipeline at this point. The towns of Prescott and Prescott Valley, in conjunction with the Salt River Project, have been carrying on investigation of the Big Chino Valley and its groundwater for several years. I don't remember exactly when they started, but when it was a laborious and difficult argument sort of thing to get authorization to build a pipeline, and they had to come to an accepted agreement of the amount of water that they could transport from the Big Chino Valley to the Prescott area. And actually it'll be Prescott itself. And Prescott Valley, the two cities, are partners in this, and they are authorized by legislation to import 8,000 acre feet, a little over 8,000 acre feet per year to Prescott, and then share it between Prescott and Prescott Valley. It's an almost even split. Prescott has a little bit more of the water than Prescott Valley has. They, in that agreement, which was a formalized agreement, and the part that really SRP, I'm sure, was responsible for, was that they agreed that if they would not harm the flow of the Verde River. That's not the exact wording, but it's the sense of it. Now, the problem in my mind, and I think in the mind of most hydrologists and geologists, is in the Big Chino Valley, the groundwater is moving from northwest to southeast, and it exits at the Verde River a few miles east of Paulden, a couple of miles east of Paulden. And that's been very well understood for several decades at least, and it's the way the groundwater works. And the other really critical factor is that if you take 8,000 acre feet per year of groundwater out, eventually you have 8,000 acre feet less water coming out of the headwater springs and being measured at the Paulden gauge. So the 8,000 acre feet right now would drastically reduce the flow at the Paulden gauge. There is some discussion, I'm told, and by others who read more than I have about it, that they are planning for a pipeline that can carry 12,000 acre feet. Now, that's not what was originally authorized, But if they truly remove 12,000 acre feet per year from the Big Chino Valley, eventually that exceeds the present low flow at the Paulden stream gauge. It means that eventually we would have, if nothing else affected the flow, we would have a dry period every year at the Paulden gauge. And fish don't work well when the river is dry. The Upper Verde is a glorious, wild river, and it's got lots of fish. It's an important animal and corridor, animal migration corridor. It really, between it and the Verde and the San Pedro, it's essentially a corridor from Mexico to the Colorado Plateau, and so from a wildlife and human enjoyment thing, it's really important, and we are really concerned about the effect on river flow. And of course, the pipeline isn't the only thing affecting the river flow, because the depletion of groundwater that we've already talked about is another contributor. And I think there are many people who think it's vital to protect that river, and I think people in the Verde Valley must think it's more vital than most people do. It's a big issue, and I wrote in that article that they agreed that there would be no depletion of the flow as a consequence of the pipeline. And so far, and they keep on with years of study that never have reached a published conclusion, because I think they have a problem that they haven't figured out how to solve. That's my guess.
Okay.
And there probably really isn't a way to keep from, unless you can put the amount of water back into the aquifer, you're gonna lose flow at the Paulden gauge.
And it very much seems that way. You know, you had showed that graph a little earlier. I know there were a couple other slides you wanted to show. We do have about 2 minutes left in this segment, in terms of, just give people a better idea of location. But yeah, it's very tough that we're in this drought, because we're not, obviously you just mentioned it, we're not sort of replacing that water that we're pumping out because of the droughts. We're not refilling our aquifers as fast. We're not getting that heavy rainfall that we get or used to get at one point. And while there probably are some sort of benefits to this, it seems like there's still a lot of work to be done with the Big Chino Pipeline. Ed, we do have about a minute. Maybe we should save the slides for the next segment. Would you want to do that?
Sure.
Okay, so we'll hang on to the slides for the next segment. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more location-wise, and we'll talk about any cities or towns that are that are threatened by this currently. When we come back on the other side of this break, don't go anywhere.
Okay.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
The EPA says C&B Construction ranks in the top 1% nationally. C&B Construction invites you to see what energy efficiency and indoor air quality can be. We have won another Department of Energy Innovation Award, and C&B Construction is the only contractor in the country to win 6 consecutive EPA Indoor Air Plus awards. Experience our zero-energy, move-in-ready homes at Crossroads at Mingus.
C&B Construction, locally respected, nationally recognized. Find out more at candbhomes.com.
Been hearing about the crazy benefits of CBD? Find out how CBD can help you at Sedona's #1 resource, CBD Sedona. Come in for a free consultation and let our trained medical staff help you find the perfect product for you. Pain relieving salves, full spectrum oils, CBD skincare, bath bombs, and even CBD for your pets. Come on by CBD Sedona today.
Terrifying jobs, high-flying linemen, take 3. Josh, this is an absolutely terrifying job. Why do you do it?
It's a very demanding job, but very rewarding and exciting.
How much energy are you actually working with up there?
500,000 volts of electricity.
It's definitely not my line of work. Does anything shock you?
Yeah, distracted drivers terrify me.
Welcome back to Countywide. On today's show, we are talking with retired U.S. Geological Survey geologist Dr. Ed Wolfe. We've talked a lot about the Verde River in the first and second segment, but here in the final segment, Ed, you had a couple slides you wanted to discuss, and we're going to show them up on our screen here. We'll start with slide 1, and I'll let you explain the slides going forward.
Okay, slide 1 is a map of the Prescott Active Management Area. There are 5 active management areas in Arizona, and they are areas like Phoenix and Tucson and so on, where long-term water use is a special problem because there's quite a bit of population. And the red areas are the municipalities. There's Chino Valley and Prescott Valley and Dewey-Humboldt are all municipalities, and way up at the top is a black circle that shows the location of Del Rio Springs. And we could go to the next slide.
Okay, that'll be slide 2.
That'll be slide 2.
Okay,
so
we got it up on the screen.
So in 1863, a troop of American soldiers arrived in the Arizona Territory to protect miners and so on from hostile natives, and they found a wonderful flowing magnificent spring and a lot of grass in the northern part of what is now the town of Chino Valley, and they set up camp there because there was lots of water, grass for their horses and so on. And actually we consider that place that's now within the town of Chino Valley as the first capital of Arizona. And they eventually had to move because they had to go to a place where they could build lumber. They could get lumber, cut down trees, have lumber to build buildings. And that place is what became Prescott. Okay. So graph number 2 is a record of the rate of flow in a stream gauge that is at Del Rio Springs. And you can see that the flow declined. The gauge was established in 1935, and flow declined from about 4,400 acre feet per year to almost zero, and it truly is almost zero. And the spring is barely there. Eventually actual stream gauge was installed, and it's down to a few hundred acre feet per year. So if you would go, this slide just illustrates that decline. If you would go to slide 3.
Okay, we got about a minute here, Ed.
Okay, so this is a map of the Prescott Active Management Area. It has contours on it, and those contours labeled 0, 25, 50, and 75, that's feet, and that is the amount of decline of the groundwater, of the water table, during the period from 1940 to 1994. And 75 feet is, well, that inside the 75-foot line, it's 75 to 100 feet. And of course, there's been more since then. So we're probably well over 100 feet at this point. Decline of the water table, and this is right in the area of the town of Chino Valley and the whole area north of it, and this is where Prescott gets all of its water as well. And I think this is a pretty good picture of the effect of this kind of pumping. So this very much affects Prescott and the towns of Chino Valley, but groundwater decline affects the town of Prescott Valley, and they are very anxious to get some additional water.
If you want to learn more about this and you want to get a bit more of an expansive explanation about what we just showed on screen here, there is a webinar, a Zoom webinar held on this Saturday from 10 to noon on CWAGAZ.org, CWAGAZ.org. There's Zoom information there for you on their website. Dr. Wolfe, thank you very much for coming on the show today to give us a little bit more information about this. I really appreciate it. Again, there is a Zoom webinar, CWAGAZ.org, if you want to go check that out, 10 to noon this Saturday. That is today's episode of Countywide. I'm your host, Philip Katafamo, wishing you a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.